Welcome to Vox Scream, a Kill Team podcast where we aim to help players of all skill levels supercharge their game and separate the signal from the noise. I'm Mark Meyer, joined by Kill Team heavyweights George Pratt and Joe Gallo. We're coming to you from the Triangle region in North Carolina. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. What's going on, fellers?
So,
What's going on, Kill Team community? Happy Worlds.
my heart hurts.
Why does your heart hurt?
Because I spent 3.5 hours playing dance games for cardio,
Oh,
and it's been literally a decade since I've done that.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, I know why you said that, and like the way you said it made it sound like you were like, my heart hurts because of this tragedy. Meanwhile,
No, my heart physically hurts. Turns out your heart is a muscle, and it can get fatigued like other muscles can.
bro is pumping over there.
he's pumping something.
Well, let's pump the brakes on some of this, fitness talk, and we can talk a little bit about the World Championship of Warhammer, Kill Team Edition.
Happy Worlds. It's not a good one, but it's Happy Worlds. I'm joking, of course. Everything's fine. It's new edition growing pains. We'll figure it out. So Worlds happens over a 4-day period, in case you didn't know, happening over at Atlanta, Georgia. They do the Kill Team championships. They do the Warhammer 40K championships. There's even like a grand narrative event that happens between here in the States and over in Warhammer World over in England. It's a super fun time from what I've heard, and I would really like to go, and hopefully at least one of us or maybe all of us will win golden tickets this time around so we can actually go, because that sounds like a ton of fun.
Well, yeah, it'd be super fun.
Yeah, it'd be
was-
sick.
But as Joe was pointing out, the way that the tournament itself worked is that there's 93 players that were invited to Worlds this year, and they spend their first 6 games determining their seed, essentially. And then from there, the top 16 players go on to a 4-round tournament to determine, the top 3 or whatever. And then everyone else also plays in their own, 16-round pods.
Yeah, and then it looked like for the final day they made another cut, and so the top 4 did another quick 2-round tournament.
Yeah, finals, semifinals.
Now, did they do that way last year too?
No, last year was a double elimination bracket because there wasn't enough players to make a Swiss.
But now, is it double the amount of players compared to last year?
I think it's like triple.
Which, I mean, come on, guys. Round of applause for the design team. As I'm going to spend a lot of this podcast not complimenting them. So we're going to give them a round of applause on that, to getting the game to the place where it is now.
Yeah, shout out Kill Team, man. Shout out Kill Team.
Kill Team turns out pretty good.
A lot of fun.
And apparently, according to the Warhammer people up top, it is their competitive game now. So, I mean, we're literally contributing to the Warhammer narrative now. All this, I don't know if you guys paid attention to this, but I like paying attention to the grand narrative. The grand narrative was entirely centered on Volkus. That's cool. That's a big deal that we're becoming part of the grander narrative and affecting things. It's reflective of the financial decision making, and hopefully we continue that momentum in this edition and further editions.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
One more point about it being very competitive. You look at the top table where the final round was played. It was a 1-point game. And It's so cool to see players at the upper echelons, just like we see in our local meta as well at the league and at our local tournaments. I do think that this edition really does make for some really fun, interesting gameplay. And it's so awesome to watch games swing on the final turn with the kill op or with just revealing your primary op. I mean, it's dope.
Yeah, I think we've all agreed over the past 2 months of this edition now, the core gameplay is there. The changes they made to the core game are great. And as I slightly transitioned into the main subject of discussion, while the core game is great, the actual balance of the game is not good, to put it mildly. As we
questionable.
It is Well, I think as we discussed previously, I think the primary problem is not that there are too many good, like top, like S tier teams. Everyone else is just not as good as them. And, when you have 33 teams in the game and 20-ish of them are not like being taken or even comparable to the other nine, that tends to be a problem.
And then just a quick stat bomb for the folks at home. So at Worlds, there were 13 teams that were played only by one player. So they only had one person in the tournament playing that particular faction. And there were 8 teams that were not played at all. So 21 of the 33 kill teams were about 63.5% of teams just not seeing a lot of love.
Yeah, and then to add on top of that, 3 teams, 3 was over 40% of the people representation. And of course, there's Legionary, Warp Coven, and Inquisition in that order.
To no one's surprise.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think just before we kind of really dig into like the how and the why, a little bit of like historical context. While things like feel very like grim right now, we have been in similar places before. For those of you that like have just gotten into the game, especially with like the new edition, towards the end or the last year around Worlds and around Nova and that time, the meta was also like pretty much this bad as well in terms of only a few teams doing well, and that was Chaos, Cole, Felgor, and Commandos.
And Gellerpox.
And Gellerpox. And, like...
Vetguard were still really good at that time.
Yes,
too.
and Vetguard were also insane. We've been here before. Do not panic. I mean, they've already done an FAQ that maybe was not enough, but they are paying attention. We will get out of this. And with that being said, things are a little unmanageable right now if you intend to play competitively. Or if you're playing competitively, I would highly suggest only taking a handful of teams.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference between this current, what I will call meta crisis, to previous meta crises is that in previous meta crises, if you weren't playing the absolute best teams, you could still play almost any other team, and if you were the better player, you would win. But in this current meta crises, if you're not playing the absolute best teams, there's better than like 50-50 odds your team is currently underperforming, which it was never been a case. Like, it's never been the thing. There's always been a couple of teams overperforming, a couple of teams underperforming. Most are in that 45-55. But there's a lot of teams not just underneath that 45, and that is I think the biggest problem. Not the teams that are overperforming, although they are hella overperforming. There's too many teams not good enough, and that is sort of skewing the teams that are too good.
And I will say, congratulations, we're officially now like our 40k brothers and sisters. If y'all don't know, that's how a lot of metas shake out in Big Hammer, where it's like a lot of the time skill doesn't necessarily matter. A lot of it comes down to strength of teams. Now, caveat, yes, being a good player does matter in Kill Team, like it just does. Like, you can't like be needy. Like, you can't just pick up Warp Coven or Legionnaire and just go to Worlds and expect to do well. But like, it is mattering a little bit now, like which teams you pick, and the strength of the rules kind of stand for themselves in a way that hasn't been the case in last edition last edition.
I'm very curious to see what the win-loss ratio for Legionary, which we are pretty much in agreement on as being like the strongest team that requires less skill to play than Warp Coven, which we also agreed was like, the best of the best. Very interested to see what those win-loss ratios look like in the context of Worlds. Maybe if that data is out when this episode releases, we can include it in the show notes. There's definitely some surprising things, though, when we dig a little bit deeper into the stats. And maybe it's just a misread from me. 2 teams that stood out to me that only had one player playing them were Felgor and Angels of Death. Angels of Death really surprised me for being that low.
So that one actually did surprise me. I do think they're being slept on. I think that they are harder to run than Legionnaire and Warp Coven personally, because they just don't have It's the Nemesis Claw problem. It's right that they don't have those piercing rules that ignore it. So a Melt-A-Gun will just kill them outright 9 times out of 10. Even a Plasma Gun will severely injure them 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, they
So
don't
they're
have unfair defensive buffs.
correct, and
They're
that's
still
the thing.
very good, but you, like we said in our tier list, for Angels of Death, you need to have a super deep roster.
Yes.
And you need to know, like, you need to play to your chapter tactics strengths. And so they're a little more pigeonholed, which sort of reins them in.
Yes, and that's the thing too. I think if I am a pro player and let's say I get my golden ticket and I'm going to Worlds and I'm looking at like the content of the team of like what is going to help bring me the most success. And I look at Warp Coven, Legionnaire, Nemesis Claw, Plague Marines, and Angels of Death, because we all know elites are good, and you start comparing those strengths, and you really start to see the gap between Legionnaire and Warp Coven, between all the other elite teams, just on their defenses alone, even just like the strength of their weapons. So, like, if we take the strongest operative on Angels of Death, which is probably like the captain, right, in terms of like pure like output of damage, you compare them to the Chosen, right? Like the Chosen with Khorne can be like putting out 16 damage in 2 hits, and can just like hit one shot. Elves can one shot. Scions can one shot like so many models in the game, and then also just take no damage in return. Whereas like the Angels of Death captain, he can ignore a normal damage once per battle, and cool, his power fist hits on 3s, and that's unique to him. But like they just don't compare. It's strength of model to strength of model. It's just not there. That doesn't mean you can't find success with them. And as I kind of like pivot away from them as we talk about Angels of Death and what was the other team you mentioned, Mark?
The Felgor Ravagers.
Yeah, Felgors too. Like I mean, super strong. I played Felgor. I got very close to getting my golden ticket with Felgor. They're basically unchanged, as we discussed in our tier list. They're arguably better than they were at the end of last edition. But the strength of elites is just so high. And here's the thing: I'm not even saying Felgor into just Warp Coven and Legionnaire. Into any of the elite teams, they just struggle. Just because
I'd like Felgor into everything that isn't Legionary specifically. I think they can mess up Warp Coven.
Yeah.
They'll mess up Phobos. They'll kind of struggle into assault heavy dueler angels, but like, who's taking 6 assault marines with dueler? No one.
Well, I mean, that's where we talk about depth of roster and how important that is, right? Like, if I think the big thing for like Legionnaire into Felgor is the Slaanesh ploy.
Just shuts them down.
It just straight up just shuts them down. And I've been really, really like trying to mull over what you do with that ploy. It's been suggested that you just change it to the same stipulation that the other Slaanesh ploy or the part of the Slaanesh ploy has, where you have to move first. But even then, it's like, okay, cool. If you catch them on initiative, right? If you're lucky enough to win, it comes down to initiative or like sequencing. I don't like a ploy, and this goes for Plague Marines too. I just don't like a ploy that just makes you just hit worst for like there is no way to counterplay around it, like, at all. Even with the changes we suggested last episode, it's, what do? You just, if you're hitting off, exactly, you just suck. If I'm the Eviscerator for Novitius hits on 4s, right?
I think it does with Ceaseless.
If I'm hitting on, if it's one of the best melee pieces on the team. Now I'm hitting on 5s. If I go into, and it's 5-6 damage, I think. Like,
5-6 brutal, yeah.
That's supposed to be damage that I'm not going to win that fight, but I'm hoping to do 10 to 12 damage to that model, right? But I'm probably not even doing anywhere near that if I'm even hitting anything at all. And we'll come back to this like again, because I think it keeps coming up. Some of the ploys that these teams have a zero counterplay other than just die, and that's a problem.
Yeah, it's just they're unfair defensives. That's just what it is.
I mean, do you guys know how would you guys work or change those 2 ploys? The Slaanesh one and the Plague Marines ploy.
The Plague Marine one is if they want to like keep their piercing reduction flavor, then they need to make piercing into piercing crits. That way you still can get your piercing, it's just harder and it isn't unfair anymore. It's strong, just not unfair.
I kind of like Can You Roll Crit suggestion of just making it the way it used to be, of just you flip a crit into a normal into a crit. Like, as somebody who played that a ton last edition, that's still really good.
Super
like,
strong, yeah.
It's
I wouldn't be upset
super
at that
strong.
either.
I don't know what you do with the Slaanesh ploy, because I think you have to rewrite the whole ploy.
Plus 1 inch. Plus 1 inch.
My thought is probably like if you really wanted to keep it as it is, where it is a reduction to piercing, I think it should be a firefight ploy. So you can do it on the big AP2 gun, but once per turning point.
Yeah, but there's only ever one piercing 2 gun.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah.
And
unless
you probably want to have a better chance of surviving against it, don't you?
So like it's still kind of super strong.
Because here's the other thing that I don't think we've discussed yet. Like, so let's just say that you straight up take away the piercing ploys, right? Just straight up take them away, replace them with something different. You know, I don't think it would necessarily like make elites like bad again, because I still think they would be fine. But I guarantee you, just taking those ploys away from War Covenant Legionnaire their win rates would probably drop to about 50 for both of them.
I think I know what to do with the Slaanesh ploy.
Okay, tell me.
So when you pop it, everyone gets blade stance, so they get to resolve dice in melee first, but it must be used to block. And then Slaanesh Marines get ceaseless defense if they've moved.
Oh, yep, perfect. That's as perfectly reasonable. That it's flavorful for what they do. I think that's pretty much perfect.
Ceaseless defense dice on a 3-up though is pretty intense.
I hope you're shooting them with a melta-gun.
If you're yes, I mean, if in fact you are taking away the piercing reduction ploy fully, then I think that's a fine thing.
Yeah,
but
I think
the piercing reduction only works on Nurgle specifically, so they would never stack anyway.
Correct.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Because the problem, like, I think even into like the mirror match, right? Like for like Legionnaire, is so often you both stare at each other and go, "Oh, we're both hitting on 4s." It's not fun. And I will say specifically for like Warp Coven, because there is something to be said that Warp Coven I did win, right? In terms of like what Warp Coven edges out over Legionnaire. And I think I'm gonna preface what I'm about to say. We have a very dedicated Warp Coven player in our community. His name is Scott. Everything I'm about to say specifically right now is going to piss him off, and I'm going to get yelled at for it. I do not care about these things. So I do think their psychic shooting is a little too strong. I think particularly Doombolt is fucking insane. The fact that it is 4/4 mortal wounds 2, you can make it piercing 1 on top of that, and not just piercing 1 once. You can take that as a boon, which, bear in mind, you can make whatever boon you want going into any match, because the boons are not limited in the same way chapter tackets are for some bizarre reason. If you didn't take it on any of your guys, you can give anybody on the team with their psychic weapon to give it piercing. So, for example, you can give their mind burn power, which is, I believe, Silent and Seek, piercing 1, and I believe it's lethal 5 as well. There's just no counterplay. It's just, oh, are you visible? Here's I forget what the damage profile is, but it doesn't matter. It's still a piercing 1 attack with, I believe, 5 attacks. That just you can't. It feels very much like, to me, like the way marker lights used to be, where it's just like, oh, are you visible? Well, I guess you're just dead then. Like, that's or at the very least, like in the Warp Covenant's case, you're taking a serious debuff, or just potentially like hitting breakpoints, particularly in like the elite like mirrors, right? Where you only have 6 models, like doing any chip damage is massive, and you could really spike on that attack and do like some serious damage at no cost to you, because you can stay on silent, stay on conceal, stay in heavy. That I can't shoot you back.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the thing about the layered defenses on Warp Coven is really big. The fact that they've got Seek is just so troublesome to me, because, you know, even with all of the defense that they have, you know, going up and fighting them in melee is basically like a better counterplay idea than a lot of your counterplay options against Legionary. But you can't do that your chances of doing that and being successful at it are lower, because they can just attack you as you're coming up the board, even if you're safe behind cover.
And even then, even so, people say just fight them. So what people are doing with the team is they're not taking power swords, they're taking the staves, and because the staves count as psychic weapons, they get ceaseless rerolls because they're all pretty much always within 9 inches of another sorcerer, because 9 inches is basically in like infinite range when you're on a kill team board. And you're just always getting ceaseless, and I believe it's stun as well.
Yeah, shock is what it's called.
Yeah, and it's shock. So it's like it's the thing with the Plague Caster on Plague Marines. You can charge him. You're just not going to do any damage, or maybe 1 damage, because I'm just parrying you out the whole time, and then I'm staring at you like an idiot, and that's still 4-6 damage on the staff, right? That's insane damage. If that's what we're calling not good in melee, like what is good in melee at this point?
I mean, they also can just take power weapons, which are good in melee, give you an extra attack. Like, you can just make sorcerers dedicated melee pieces, and now the idea of, well, just fight them. It's like, I can't just fight them. They've got 14, 50 wound, Space Marines with 5 attack power weapons ready to shove them up my rectum.
Oh, but then they don't have any shooting. Once again, not true. Then they just take fucking rubrics, and the rubrics just shoot you to pieces, because if you set them up in good spots, they're going to have ceaseless pretty much every time. They're all AP 1, and then shooting them is a joke because of the piercing ploy, and then they save on 2s. Like,
and then they can just, like, that dice does 1 damage, actually.
And then also on top of that, they can just get healed on counteract. Like,
ignore crits with sorcerer's robes.
Yeah, shooting rubrics is worthless. You got to fight the rubrics, but if they take dedicated melee sorcerers, you can't safely fight the rubrics because you're not killing them in 1 melee, and that means that the sorcerer can just come in. Now he's got 5 attacks on 2's power weapon. He's gonna rip you a new one, and then it's a Tempiric guy. He'll heal the rubric up.
Yeah, and now that we're like saying that out loud, like I'm a little hesitant to like get like super aggressive with the changes, just because like I feel like they did a decent job of uplifting elites, and I don't want to like take Warp Coven and just throw them to the bottom of the pile just because they annoy me in particular, right? Because I do think like there are some like core things about Warp Coven where if you change them, like there's a good chance they just fall to the bottom. Now, bear in mind, I don't think no changes should happen to them. I think the piercing ploy is the big one.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think what George said in the last episode, where basically all teams need to be brought towards A tier, is very true.
I think we can do both. I think we can bring the bottom teams to A tier. I think we can bring the S teams down to A tier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm very happy to entertain more Elites Are Busted talk, specifically Legionary and Warp Coven. But I do want to just throw this out there, and maybe we can give a final word on this before we move on to some of these other stats and teams. Legionary and Warp Coven made up 31% of the total players at Worlds, at 16% for Legionary and 15% for Warp Coven. So, yeah, I mean, that's a big chunk of people playing these teams. And, I mean, obviously for good reason.
Yeah, and I mean, to transition to talk about the other giant elephant in the room, inquisitorial agents. Like, I cannot... I'm gonna be like a light here on my criticism, but it's extremely frustrating, and I just don't understand how the designers thought giving them the ability to do what they did the first time they came out the same way again wouldn't also be a problem.
I think it is mostly that inquisitorial agents was not popular anywhere but Spain, more or less, because nobody wanted to buy that many models and the correct models and have 3 different teams to have, and then also play a team that is hard to play. They were never
they're incredibly hard to play,
easy to play, and so to get those results you needed to spend a lot of time practicing with them, and just like most people weren't going to do that. So I think actually the changes they made are good for the team. Yes, they make them easier to play because they're better, but mostly they just make them easier to play. And I don't think they're so much better as a team that it really changes their power level or dynamic in comparison to where they were like in a tier list last edition. Like there were teams that were better than them, there are teams that are better than them now.
And I don't think that they need like a bunch of drastic changes, right? Take it back to where it was before, where it's like you can have one plasma and one melta-gun, in addition to, let's say, or yeah, I mean, something like that. Like you can have your pistolier that doesn't count towards total, but otherwise one plasma, one melta, and then that way, obviously, like it's a team that has access to a lot of strong weapons.
And make that fucking eviscerator hit on fours.
Don't touch my quest keeper.
Why the fuck he hits on 4 or 3s when a fucking Space Marine sergeant with a power fist hits on fucking 4s and Howling Banshee Exarch.
Yeah, power fists are bigger than eviscerators, duh.
I'm sorry. Are we arguing that a Howling Banshee Exarch and the Quest Keeper are on the same skill level?
Clearly, duh.
Maybe.
No, I can just tell you that's not true.
I don't know why the Quest Keeper hits on 3s, but I like it.
Do you know what Exarchs do in lore, Mark? They kill Space Marines.
Don't care.
They kill.
Lore is lore. This ain't lore, baby.
Yeah, this is Kill Team, man. This is Fun Team, and I think that killing Exarchs is fun.
I just there so consistent. Like I think there's a certain level of like, okay, all the leaders sitting on 3s. That's just like a consistency thing, right? Like across the board, we're just doing that as a thing.
They brought everything more in line as to what they like. A squad of that would be in Big Hammer, which is the squad hits on the same number, and the sergeant is still just a dude.
I really broadly just enjoy that because I think, I think you said this, Mark, at the beginning of this edition. The leaders are now like more support pieces, versus like just these powerhouses of like doing things. That's true for some leaders, right? For some of them,
I think it's much easier to use your leaders who are more support pieces as more dedicated support pieces.
Yes.
And I mean, it's certainly a different thing from team to team, right? Like you are much less like Night Lords being a good example for you, right? Like before you have like so many different things you want to do with your visionary, right? Especially when you had to do loot on 3 different points every turn. Now that he doesn't hit on 2s, it's a much easier decision, I think, to use your leader in, less aggressive ways, where before you were much more incentivized, especially with like, Space Marine leaders and like, your Exarch who hit on 2s and are just like killing machines. It is much easier to make a more conservative decision with them.
Yeah, that's fair. So kind of like round out the thing about Inquisitorial Agents, because I really don't think like they merit much discussion outside of just they could just take a lot of plasma and they're hard to play, and that pro players tend to be good at the game.
Yeah.
So
like Absolute Authority isn't the problem. It's good, but it is still.
I would like to see Absolute Authority go away. It's just.
I think Absolute Authority is no longer a problem because it doesn't work on free ploys, and there are now multiple teams in the game that can just make ploys free. And like, it's weird to say this, but Absolute Authority has counterplay?
I would disagree with that. I mean, it has counterplay.
Doesn't work on command reroll, which is nice.
Wait, it did before?
I think it did. I'm not sure. I didn't play enough Inquisition.
I think that's extremely stupid if it did, but it definitely shouldn't. But for me, it's just there is no counterplay to it. Like if your team doesn't have free ploys, I think a lot of teams revolve around like a very specific ploy or like a specific 2 sets of ploys that like, kind of let them do what they do, and you need it during like a very specific turning point. So like for example, the Quillons, right? Half of their ploys are like momentum builders for turning point 2, and like really helps with some of their accuracy problems. And if you can just shut that down, what I just throw my hands up and pray to God I keep rolling 3s, right? There's a lot of teams that just function that way, and it's basically, it literally you pick up a card, it has the word no on it, and you smack your opponent in the face with it. And you just have to accept it. And
but you play Nemesis Claw and they have Vox Scream.
Yeah.
But that's not okay. That's not no.
That is in fact just no.
That's not no. It's no, not.
And Absolute Authority is no, pick something else.
They are the same essentially, where it is you cannot do the thing that you were about to do.
But that's not okay. That's not necessarily true.
But the only thing that Vox Scream doesn't have is a rider that says, actually, models that are injured are still fine, or if this is a machine, it's still fine. Or Absolute Authority says, but there's a subset of stuff that you cannot use this on. Vox screams, you just use it. As long as you got the CP, you use it.
Right, but it's also is Absolute Authority 1+ still?
Yes.
Okay, thank God. But I mean, in all fairness, like they knew how strong Vox Scream was. They released it as 1+. So like,
yeah, well, I mean,
the
listen, they've released Pathfinders in the way that they released Pathfinders, okay?
Well, my point is that fucking Nemesis Claw isn't tearing up the scene because of Vox Scream. It wasn't even doing that last edition.
There was, in fact, only one Nemesis Claw player at Worlds.
And yeah, and he didn't do well.
That's because Nemesis Claw, despite Vox Scream, is still very fair.
Yes, and like I said, anything that's not elites, they're perfectly fine into, and even into elites, they're okay. But like, if you're playing into Legionnaire or War Coven, you just lose because Legionnaire says, you know how you're like the melee focused elite team? Yeah, now you hit on 4s and there's nothing you can do about it. And War Coven just goes, I shoot you with piercing 1 gun and you die. So and then Inquisitorial Agents, that's a much more even matchup because they're 7 moon models and they can kill those. But anyway, you want to touch on Hyrotech real quick?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think you could sum up the Hyrotech argument for very much the same way that you summed up the Inquisitorial Agents argument. They kind of like walked back on a lot of the changes that they used to balance the team in the last edition, and then like there's just not as good of a counterplay to them being able to just lock you in your deployment zone.
Yeah, I mean, that's really I hate to say that's really what's giving them their strength right now. And it would not shock me that if you took that away, if they shot into like the 40% win rate area.
No, I think Hyrotech are fine. I think they're strong.
I think people get off of. I think people will immediately hop off of them, and then that's why they're going to go to the 40% win rate area.
I think if anything needs to change, it is the the nanomine.
Agreed.
I don't think it's the 6-inch bubble. I think it is the fact that if I can see a spot, I can put it there. I think that's the problem.
Yeah, I think it needs to be 6 inches invisible, and then that way, if you want to do some aggressive plays with it turn 1, that's fine. But you're, putting a model in a more precarious position to do so. You're not just doing it from deployment zone.
Yeah, I think that might be the only change they need, and then they'll be a perfect team.
Again, hoping that I think the first round of changes are, a bit more measured and less drastic, because I am happy the elites are doing well, even if I am a horde enjoyer. It's fine. I'm fine with the most popular factions having their time in the sun. It's fine. It's fine. I'm fine.
I like the idea that horde teams are no longer, well, I'll just swamp an elite team and win.
Yeah.
I like that it is like I am using a bunch of low quality dudes and I need to make these shitty dumbasses compete with superhuman space soldiers. And that you can, but it requires effort, where in the last edition there was a lot less effort. It was just, I take these 6 dudes and I pass with them so that if you make a mistake, my big guns can kill you.
Yeah, and then I mean just hotshot Laz all around. Let's give everybody a little piercing action. Or rather, AP, as we used to say in my day.
I think my back hurts now.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, my back hurts too, buddy.
TLDR, Worlds sounds like it was fun. Sounds like we need a little bit of, somebody needs to address game balance a little bit, but I don't think that we're like so far off from the game being, in a really, really awesome spot. Because the game itself it's just game balance is a little lacking currently. But if we want to talk a little bit more about game balance, we can maybe talk a little bit about, the local meta, or we can talk some about some of our recent league games. And I'd love to just open up the floor to either one of you who would like to begin.
Yeah, I can start. So I managed to get 2 of my league games in. One I had to postpone. I was able to get that game in. Against Scott on Into the Dark. I played hand into his Warp Coven. And I played him in the tournament on Open. We tied. I could have won, but instead of getting points, I got a little kill horny. In this Into the Dark game, I killed one model and got tabled. And I don't know what I could have done differently. I think I might have been able to kill 2 models before getting tabled. But man, 4/4 piercing 1 flamers on Into the Dark.
Downright nasty.
Good as it turns out. So I got smashed. I lost that game. Then I played Clowns into Blades of Cain. I played Eddie, a local guy, which is a weird game. I won that game, and it came down to Turning Point 4 initiative, which I won, even though he used his runes of foreseeing or whatever. And so I won initiative, and so I won the game. And that was that.
Before I talk about my league games, I think that the local meta has been really good lately. I think that a lot of people have been like trying out elites, but I think that really everybody's just trying a lot of different flavors right now. Nobody's really like locked into any one team. You can obviously, like, Scott's playing a lot of Warp Coven, but Scott, played Warp Coven all last edition and they were, okay at best. And I'm fine with him having his time in the sun too.
Yeah.
I've played a lot of really cool games lately. This past week in the league, I played Salvagers against Angels of Death on Into the Dark, and that game was a lot of fun, really close. I lost by 1 point. It's crazy watching like games on Into the Dark now where somebody has Seek Light, because one of these giant rooms is just going to be just a powder keg waiting for somebody to come out and get shot.
It's really funny, especially when you're playing hand with the bird.
Yeah, I mean, my opponent with their Angels of Death, they had their sniper in like one of these giant side rooms, and I had my locator out there, and it was literally just a game of chicken to see who was going to come up, who was going to sabotage the objective, and who was going to eat a death sandwich on the way out. The funny thing is I didn't get to use my equipment that lets me manipulate dice rolls, because my opponent rolled a 6 and I rolled a 2, and so the best I could have done, being on top of 2 objectives and controlling 2 objectives, is also a 6, and they broke the tie anyway. And the week before that, I played against Kroot, and Kroot are fucking awesome. It's a really fun team. I was playing Hearthkin in that game as well. We played a lot of Brute Brothers too, and that's a fun team. It's a team that I want to play more of, but I think it's a team that I need to kind of really... I need to get the fundamentals of 3rd edition a little bit more solid before I really dig into a team like that that's got a lot of decision making before the game. I sort of think of the way that I approach these like league games is if I know what my opponent's playing and I know what I'm playing, then I can kind of take some time and make some of these pregame decisions before I'm even at the store. But I think partly because of my own schedule, but partly because I'm just like not fully 100% locked in on just knowing all of the core gameplay and really having like that sort of stuff memorized and down pat as much as I like. I think that kind of stuff is taking up my pregame time, is just kind of remembering and thinking through those sorts of things, as opposed to just sort of my team and the decisions I need to make before the game with my specific team. But, this is an easily correctable problem that, in the next couple of weeks, I expect to, turn around.
Yeah, just play more Kill Team.
I need to play more Kill Team. I'm not locked in right now, but I'm doing well enough in the league. I think I'm 3-2-1 at this point, and I'll take that.
Yeah, I think I'm 4-2. I think my loss is to Scott and Joe.
Yeah. No, that was a good game, man.
For you, yeah, I rolled a lot of 1s and 2s, which is not good when you play Clowns.
Rip.
I will say I think it evened out on your defense rolls personally, but that's...
Which is wild that I even, like, why did Clowns? It's nice that I survived shooting as Clowns. You don't expect it. But I didn't do anything otherwise. But I still managed to keep it a close game, which I am proud of.
Yeah, I think it was, 3 or 4 points? Something like that?
I think it was less. I think it was like a 1 or 2 point game.
I don't know. We could always ask
Oh,
Mark.
it was super close.
So yeah, I'm currently undefeated in the league. I've been jumping around between Nemclaw, Plague, and Archon. And once I finish Angels of Death, I'll be doing that as well. Tuesday is going to be my game into Scott. I'm playing Plague. That is going to be a slog because I know Mark Meyer already knows in our Magic group chat why I'm laughing. Because I told Scott that I was 100% playing Plague Marines because it's my best option into Warp Coven. Honestly, that's not exactly Warp Coven or Legionnaire, and I refuse to play those in the league. So because I want to prove you don't need to play those teams to win. But my league's been going good. I just did my game into Eddie today. Plague Marines into Blades of Cain. I just kind of felt bad because it's like Eddie kind of had a rough game. He wasn't at a top performance. I mean, even he admitted that himself. He forgot several things. But I will say, I mean, Blades of Cain are not like as terrible into elites as I thought they are. The Dire Avengers got a kind of bit of a buff. But at the end of the day, they do melee, and I turn all of their melee into hitting into fours, which is fine because they get ceaseless most of the time. But like so do I, so it's like it evens out, and most of the time I have 5 attacks anyway, so it's like I have more dice too. And it's very easy to hand out poison tokens, and contain was just a very easy it was very easy for me to score because he can't move up, and I just get into defensive positions. I will say I like the way Death Guard play because they play exactly like Death Guard should play. They lumber slowly forward and dig in, or they lumber slowly forward and just kind of kill everything in their path while taking hits, and it's very flavorful for the Death Guard. And game before that, I played Ezra's Plague Marines. I played Hand. Hand is just very good at killing Marines. I think Hand has a pretty good matchup into them just because they can just kind of stay away and shoot you with heavy AP weapons, or at the very least, like you can kind of predict what they're going to do with your alpha move. It's kind of similar to like what George you did in our game. I took Champion, however, compared to you took Recover Plant Beacons.
I took Plant Beacons because I knew I was going to kill fucking anything.
I did kill things with Hand because it's Hand. And the bird, legitimately, like the bird on Into the Dark against Marines is like a really solid option. Because you can just like set up a play where you're shooting with the Shard Carbine, you mark them and hit them with the Seek Light. And if you do From Darkness Death, you're guaranteed at least 1 crit, and it's lethal 5, so you're just kind of pouring mortal wounds on. And it kind of forced him to like put the Plague Caster to like be in a position to heal, which if I'm just pouring on the wounds, like at a certain point I'm just going to put on more wounds than you can heal, or at the very least like I'll have moved up the board enough to where I can like just deal with the problem. That's just kind of how that game went. He kind of abandoned one side of the board, and I just kind of took that side of the board and outscored. And other than that, I haven't really had any particularly close games outside of George, to be honest. Just because I'm playing teams that I know. I mean, Nemesis Claw is strong. It's a team that I know very well. And I haven't really like run into any that's the thing. I haven't run into Legionnaire or Warp Coven.
Yeah, I thought I'd play more Legionary, but I'm currently addicted to Elf nonsense. And then I threw my Ravagers in my case, just in case. So those are the 3 teams
I promise you that the minute you taste that power, George, you're not going to want to get off the train. Personally, I as somebody who tasted that power for exactly 1 tournament, it's like the Ring of Power. I can't put it back on again.
I played Ravagers for a hot minute. I found that the sweatier the game gets with Ravagers, the less fun the team is. And I don't really know why that's the case.
Because you're supposed to be Goatmen running at your opponent screaming, and they just don't facilitate playing that way sometimes. Sometimes you have to play like how the actual Goatmen do it in lore and like set up ambushes and stuff like that. And that's not fun. You want to play Goatmen that just run into shit and like throw spears and whatever.
No, man, I'm ambush all the way. I play elves. I think it was the lack of range firepower in its totality that really makes a close game less fun because you have less options to deal with the problem. I think the fact that the Shaman now has a ranged weapon probably makes that those closer games a little more bearable. But I have yet to test it.
I can see that. But yeah, I've been having fun. I mean, people have been, we've been pretty Plague Marine heavy
The psychic
lately.
shooting attack works with pelting firepower. Oh God.
Oh God. Anyways,
You created a monster.
Yeah, I did. I'm sorry. I apologize to the league. Yeah, I'm having fun. I think a lot of our local meta is a lot of Phobos, a lot of Plague Marines. I saw a lot of elf players. Let's see what else have I seen. We had David was playing Kroot.
I'm so excited to see Kroot players.
Yeah, I mean, we really only have one, unfortunately, which sucks.
Yeah,
I mean,
unfortunately, Day is just too busy to be in the league, but she is she's maining Kroot at the moment.
Yeah, they're fun. I mean, I tried them, and maybe when I'm done with all these commission paints that I'm working on, I will finish the my Kroot because they're just fun and they feel.
Yeah, I'll paint them for you.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I think I would rather take this microphone and swallow the tip of it whole. But anyway.
Kill Team's still fun, everyone.
Allegedly.
No, there's no allegedly. It's still fun.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Vox Screen. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. Please follow, subscribe, and leave us a review. Any of those things are going to help us grow. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with another episode.